Speedrunning. While they may take different names and meanings in different communities, almost all games share two main categories, any percent and 100%. 100% seeks to fully complete a game, while any percent wants to beat the game as quickly as possible by any means necessary. Take that with an asterisk though. While by any means necessary works in a bubble, in reality, communities define what it means to beat a game and what means are allowed. Some games have mechanics that fundamentally change how the game is played, calling into question how the rules of the game should be defined. In the case of Battle for Bikini Bottom, that mechanic exists in the form of in-game cheats. While runs that use these cheat codes could reasonably be defined as any percent, their usage was deemed to be outside of the spirit of the game, leading to the creation of cheat percent. Throughout the run, 3 cheats will be used a total of 10 times. This includes one that is used 8 times to give the player 10 golden spatulas that are used in order to unlock the door to the boss, as well as 2 cheats which give SpongeBob unlockable abilities. These abilities are the Bubble Ball, which functions as a bowling ball attack, and the Cruise Bubble, which acts as a remote-controlled missile that requires SpongeBob to be stationary. Combined, these cheats allow SpongeBob to go from starting the game in the pineapple, through the game's hub world, and into the Chum Bucket, where timing ends once Robo SpongeBob is defeated. SpongeBob is able to complete all this in a fraction of the time it takes to complete an any percent run. With a time of 1 minute and 25.567 seconds, this run represents a 16.783 second improvement over the previous Cheat Percent task from June 27, 2018. But before we begin explaining the task, let's explain some of the things you will see on screen. At times, the footage of the task will be overlaid with an input viewer and memory engine. The input viewer is located at the bottom of the screen and shows the buttons that are being pressed at a given moment, while the memory engine will be located on the left side and displays internal game values. Each button of the input viewer corresponds with a button on the GameCube controller. They will turn opaque when they are pressed and be transparent when they aren't. The memory engine is separated into different sections. The first section shows how many collectibles SpongeBob has, of which only spatulas matter for this task. The second section is SpongeBob's position within the level. The next section has values for momentum. Horizontal momentum indicates non-walking movement by SpongeBob, such as bowling, and the direction this movement is pushing him in, while vertical momentum is how quickly SpongeBob is rising or falling. The next section is for values related to the Bubble Bowl, namely whether SpongeBob is bowling or not, the speed of the bowl, and a concept known as bowl dampening, which will be explained later. The final section is more general information related to SpongeBob, such as his health, the direction he is facing, and a game state value known as reboot physics, which will also be explained later. With all this established, it's time to get into the run. The run begins by inputting cheats into the menu. The cheat codes entered consist of alternating patterns between the X and Y button. The codes can be input frame perfectly, meaning that on one frame the X button can be pressed and on the next frame the Y button can be pressed. In the case that the same button needs to be pressed twice in a row though, the button must be released for one frame before it can be pressed again, otherwise the game will treat the input as being held. As a result of this, the task performs 40 inputs in the span of 54 frames, or 0.9 seconds. This is not all the cheats that need to be performed though. Due to a cap the game has in place, it is necessary to either wait for this cap to expire or to split the cheats into 2 segments, as it's not possible to input more than 9 cheats within a 2-second window. Since the menu transitions frame perfectly, it saves 12 frames to split the cheats up. With the Bubble Bowl power unlocked, SpongeBob is able to jump on top of Gary and bowl to the spatula door. When SpongeBob performs the Bubble Bowl, he does not remain stationary but instead moves forward at a variable speed. The amount that the bowl moves forward is dependent on SpongeBob's movement speed on the frame that the bowl was performed. If SpongeBob is stationary, the bowl moves SpongeBob forward at a speed of 0.6 units, but if SpongeBob were walking, this speed is up to 5 units. This speed is not capped though. If SpongeBob is on a moving platform, the speed of the platform's movement will be factored in and the bowling speed will be faster. As it would have it, walking off Gary also provides a speed boost. Due to the way the game functions, certain spots do not want SpongeBob to stand on them. If SpongeBob finds himself wedged in a tight space, underneath a falling object, or even just walking off a ledge, the game will force him out of these spots. This displacement happens in a single frame, meaning that SpongeBob is traveling a large number of units in an instant. If SpongeBob bowls on this frame, this displacement is transferred into bowling speed. As a result, walking off of Gary functions as walking off a ledge, allowing the displacement to be captured and transferred into enough bowling speed to reach the spatula toll door. Compared to the prior task, this bowl is an improvement of 69 frames or 1.15 seconds. Nice. Previously, the task opted to perform a cruise boost to reach the door. When a bowl is performed on the same frame the cruise bubble is initiated, the cruise bubble will take precedence over the bowl so as long as the cruise bubble can be activated. While the cruise bubble takes precedence over the bowl, the forward motion of the bowl is still initiated. Since the bowl never starts though, it is never able to end. This causes the game to store the momentum from the bowl, granting SpongeBob with a constant force that pushes him in the direction he is facing. Although it is possible to obtain a cruise boost without facing a wall is almost always used as it allows for higher speeds to be obtained. This is due to the cruise bubble requiring SpongeBob to remain relatively motionless in order to activate. If SpongeBob moves too far while the cruise bubble is activated, the game will force SpongeBob out of the animation. By positioning SpongeBob in front of a wall, the wall prevents the cruise boost forward motion from pushing SpongeBob too far. By having a slow cruise boost activated, moving SpongeBob to the side allows for a cruise boost to be captured that is equal to SpongeBob's moving speed. This is possible due to cruise boost decreasing SpongeBob's rotational momentum to 1/10 its normal speed, allowing SpongeBob to move sideways rather than immediately turning. A simple way to think of cruise boosting would be to think of the moving walkways that are commonly found in airports. Regardless of whether you are walking or not, they are constantly moving you forward. If you walk with them, you move faster, but if you walk against them, you move slower. Additionally, as a result of the bowl being cancelled immediately, the cruise boost has the full speed of the bowl. This is a large factor in the differences between cruise boosts and bowls, as bowls undergo a process known as bowl dampening. Over the course of the bowling animation, the speed that SpongeBob moves at slows down until it is eventually only a fraction of its original speed. Since cruise boosting interrupts the bowling animation though, it is not susceptible to bowl dampening, allowing it to retain the full initial speed from the bowl. In the case of the old Cheat TAS, the segment used a variant of cruise boosting known as an instant cruise boost, or an ICB. While the normal cruise boost requires the trick to be performed twice in order to capture the full speed bowl, an ICB does this in one cruise bubble. By moving towards a wall and performing a cruise boost when SpongeBob is within a certain number of units of it, the cruise boost will activate with a single cruise bubble. Its speed though will correspond to the number of units away from the wall that SpongeBob is when the cruise boost is activated. In order to get the fastest ICB, it's optimal for SpongeBob to be as many units away from the wall as is allowed on a single frame. The way this distance is determined is by SpongeBob's movement speed. If SpongeBob is walking, he is moving at a speed of 5 units. The maximum distance SpongeBob can be for an ICB is 5 units, meaning the maximum speed SpongeBob can get from it is a 5-speed cruise boost. The reason that an ICB was slower than performing a bowl in the pineapple was due to the short distance that needed to be covered. Since the bowl was able to achieve a higher speed than the ICB, its initial burst of speed was enough to reach the door faster than cruise boosting. Had the distance to the door been further, bowl dampening would have played a much more impactful role in the segment, either making the ICB faster or necessitating a larger displacement be used for the bowl to remain optimal. The hub begins with SpongeBob performing an ICB. This time, the ICB is performed off of Plankton. By positioning SpongeBob at the edge of the hitbox, it's possible to slide off Plankton's hitbox while activating a cruise boost since SpongeBob moves far enough away from his initial location that the game forces the cruise bubble animation to end early. After this, SpongeBob immediately jumps and spins, hitting some tikis. The tikis then fall on top of SpongeBob, allowing him to perform what is known as an uncapped cruise boost, or UCB. Prior to UCBs being discovered, it was believed that the maximum speed a cruise boost could reach was around 27 speed. The reason why 27 was believed to be the speed cap was that when speeds higher than this were attempted, the cruise bubble would no longer override the bubble bowl, as SpongeBob was moving too fast for the game to activate the ability. This would cause SpongeBob to instead bowl and clip through the wall he was facing. For whatever reason though, the developers decided to add a cap on how fast SpongeBob is able to move when he has downward momentum, but there is no cap in place when he has either no vertical momentum or upwards vertical momentum. What this means is that even if SpongeBob has a true movement speed above this cap, his functional movement speed will be lowered whenever his vertical momentum becomes negative. Since the functional movement cap is lower than the cruise boost speed cap, if SpongeBob were to have down momentum while performing a cruise boost that results in a speed above the cruise boost speed limit of about 27, his functional speed would not surpass that value, even though his true speed does, thus an uncapped cruise boost can be activated. In order for this to be useful though, it's necessary for the vertical momentum to not reset when SpongeBob is on the ground. Luckily, bowling stores vertical momentum. Cruise boosting retains this ability, since the bowl's properties never end while cruise boosting, down momentum can be continuously stored. Unfortunately though, SpongeBob cannot perform a cruise bubble when he has too much down momentum, as it prevents the cruise bubble from being activated. Luckily, when SpongeBob performs a bubble wand attack, he can stall himself in the air. This removes most, but not all of SpongeBob's down momentum, allowing him to still perform a cruise bubble. With this all put together, SpongeBob is able to perform much faster cruise boosts by capping his functional movement speed while still passing the necessary checks to perform a cruise bubble. While the bubble wand is necessary to perform the UCB, it also breaks the 2 lower tikis. This causes the tiki they were supporting to fall down and land on SpongeBob. Since SpongeBob and the Tiki cannot occupy the same space, the game then pushes SpongeBob out from under the Tiki, allowing him to perform a UCB on the same frame of displacement. And with that, SpongeBob is off. He bashes to remove the down momentum, lifting the functional momentum cap for the duration of the upward momentum. At this point, the rest of the segment is taking the straightest line possible while maintaining a lack of downward momentum. There's just one issue with this. There are several walls in the way. As luck would have it though, when SpongeBob performs a cruise bubble, SpongeBob's horizontal collision detection briefly fails as his default standing animation transitions to the cruise bubble animation. This is referred to as L-clipping. Normally, this would be inconsequential as SpongeBob is stationary when he uses the cruise bubble. However, if SpongeBob has high speed from cruise boosting, not only can he input a cruise bubble and have his movement speed cancel the animation immediately, he'll still be intangible for one frame. The faster SpongeBob is moving, the easier it is to clip through walls. To make this even more interesting, since task timing begins on console start, the run starts with what is known as reboot physics. One important change of reboot physics is that SpongeBob's L-clip intangibility is significantly larger. This makes it even easier to clip through the hub's walls. The effectiveness of reboot clips decrease every time SpongeBob presses the cruise bubble button. This means that actions like cruise boosting and clipping both decrease reboot physics until they are no longer applicable. Once SpongeBob has reached the Chum Bucket's entrance, the remaining 5 cheat codes are input. To underline just how fast these inputs are being performed, overall, this segment is an improvement of 9.15 seconds or 549 frames over the 2018 TAS. While both TAS's ICB off of Plankton, this is where the similarities end. The 2018 TAS begins the segment by bowling before performing the ICB. This bowl is then used to display SpongeBob at the first wall. By bowling and performing the cruise bubble on the frame of the displacement, SpongeBob is able to clip through the walls using the same principles as L-clipping, but it is referred to as an L-bowl here. This is followed up with another ICB off of a nearby jellyfish. SpongeBob then enters the SpongeBall power-up. The SpongeBall is capable of storing the locational properties of the object it is on when SpongeBob completes the state transition. Since SpongeBob became a SpongeBall on top of the rotating bowl, he stored a significant amount of momentum. This can be used to L-bowl through the next gate, with the speed from the bowl carrying SpongeBob all the way to the doors of the Chum Bucket where the rest of the cheats can be input. Once inside the Chum Bucket, SpongeBob walks to the left and performs an ICB off the table. He then enters an unavoidable cutscene trigger. The player cannot control SpongeBob during the cutscene, but it is still possible to reach the spatula toll door since a cruise boost is activated. This represents an improvement of 13 frames over the 2018 TAS. Previously, SpongeBob went to the right and cruise boosted off the wall. Unfortunately, the wall's hitbox is too large to cancel the cruise bubble animation by sliding off, requiring the cruise bubble button to be held so the game then forces SpongeBob to turn forwards. This cancels the cruise bubble animation since SpongeBob's forward momentum pushes him too far away from his initial position. This method of cruise boosting is known as reverse cruise boost or an RCB and is slower than ICBing off the table. In the Robo SpongeBob fight, high above SpongeBob's spawn position, there's an active debug trigger that can instantly end the boss fight. The only problem is that it's all the way up there. In order to reach it, SpongeBob begins by turning and bowling towards where the boss's glove will come from. The swinging glove causes the bowl to be hit back onto the platform before hitting SpongeBob. Despite being damaged, SpongeBob isn't stuck in a damage animation since he performed a cruise bubble before getting hit. Due to this, the game forces him out of the cruise bubble animation rather than into a normal damage animation. From here, SpongeBob jumps on top of the bowl and starts to bowl again. While SpongeBob is winding up a second bowl, the original bowl continues to roll. By the time SpongeBob releases the second bowl, the first bowl has fallen off the platform. SpongeBob bowls into the corner of the platform, causing the bowl to bounce at a sharp upward angle. After this, SpongeBob jumps and reaches the trigger, skipping the boss fight. The reason SpongeBob was able to reach this trigger is due to how the game factors external objects into SpongeBob's momentum. The game only has one bubble bowl model, so when a new bowl is spawned while the bowl is already in level, it is actually the old bowl being reused. When SpongeBob stands on an object, the game factors the momentum properties of that object into SpongeBob's movement. For instance, if a platform is moving up, SpongeBob can jump higher. By standing on the old bowl, the game registers the bowl as SpongeBob's grounded position. By spawning a new bowl, the game registers SpongeBob as still being on the new bowl and thus attaches to the new bowl's momentum, which possesses significantly more rotational momentum than the bowl SpongeBob was previously standing on. Additionally, by moving SpongeBob further away from the center of the bowl, he has significantly more linear momentum due to rotational momentum remaining constant. A simple way to think of this is thinking about the hands of a clock. Every second, the second hand travels 6 degrees around the clock. This is true regardless of the part of the hand. That said, the tip of the hand had to move a greater distance than the base of the hand due to the tip being further from the pivot point. Since both the base and the tip had to travel 6 degrees in that 1 second, the tip of the hand had to move faster than the base. Due to SpongeBob's momentum being based on the rotation of the bowl, moving him further from the center increases his momentum, allowing SpongeBob to jump and reach the trigger. You may be wondering why it's possible for SpongeBob to jump while in midair. Well, this is a gaming physics concept known as coyote time. Remember those old Looney Tunes cartoons, specifically Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner? Time and time again, whether by running off a ledge or the ground crumbling beneath him, Wile E. Coyote would find himself airborne. Rather than immediately falling though, he is suspended mid-air for a moment, and some games have adopted this concept. The player is able to walk off a ledge while still being able to perform grounded moves for a period of time. For BfBB, coyote time lasts for 15 frames, during which SpongeBob is able to double jump, bash, or any grounded move. From here, while the game may be playing a cutscene, SpongeBob is still falling in the background. The task must wait for SpongeBob to touch the ground before skipping the cutscene, since touching the trigger causes SpongeBob to collect a spatula. When SpongeBob collects a spatula, an animation is cued to play, but only when SpongeBob is touching the ground. If the task were to immediately skip the cutscene, the animation would not play until SpongeBob were in the next level, but by waiting for SpongeBob to touch the ground, the animation starts to play before being cancelled by skipping the cutscene. Compared to the 2018 task, the segments are very similar, but it is now executed at a much higher level. The glove that is used doesn't impact the speed of the segment, but the right side glove allows for the bowl to be set up easier. Overall, the improvement of execution alone saves 133 frames, or 2.2167 seconds over the 2018 task. Brain, the final segment. Timing ends once these 3 fuses are destroyed. SpongeBob begins by turning around and performing an ICB. Rather than taking a straight line, SpongeBob walks slightly to the right. This positions him so that once he has the ICB, he is facing another wall. From here, he can stack ICBs, which is possible due to cruise boosting increasing SpongeBob's speed. As a reminder, ICB speed is determined based on how many units away from the wall SpongeBob was when it was initiated, capping at SpongeBob's movement speed. Since SpongeBob is moving faster, he can be further from the wall and still reach it in 1 frame. Given this, stacking ICBs adds a maximum of 5 units of speed per ICB performed. Once the ICBs have been stacked, SpongeBob jumps onto a trampoline. Trampolines in BfBB are separated into 2 categories, unscripted and scripted. The difference between these categories is whether they lock control of SpongeBob. Unscripted trampolines give SpongeBob a certain unit of height, but he is still able to move freely. Scripted trampolines also assign a unit of height, but they also assign horizontal momentum to SpongeBob. Due to this, jumping onto a scripted trampoline sends SpongeBob to an assigned location. The issue with this is when SpongeBob jumps onto a scripted trampoline with the cruise boost active, it still gives the same unit of height and locks control of movement, but the cruise boost overrides the horizontal momentum and direction. Now, SpongeBob's facing angle when he lands on the trampoline determines the direction he moves, while the speed of the cruise boost determines the horizontal momentum. By jumping onto a specific point in the trampoline, SpongeBob is able to land on a small ledge on the brain. From here, SpongeBob can navigate to an entry point of the brain. By positioning SpongeBob under a slanted ceiling, SpongeBob is able to bash and perform an L-clip and phase through the wall. Once inside of the brain, SpongeBob bowls and hits a fuse through the wall. When a bowl spawns, it appears at the tip of SpongeBob's hand. Due to how thin walls in BfBB are, the winding motion SpongeBob performs will push SpongeBob's hand up against the wall, or even clip through the wall, so when the bowl spawns, its position is on the other side of the wall. SpongeBob then activates a new ICB. He uses this ICB to navigate to another tube located above him. From here, SpongeBob partially clips into a 3rd tube so that he's able to bowl the fuse located within it without having to fully clip in. He then performs an L-clip that pushes SpongeBob into the tube below him and directly next to the final fuse. And with the final bubble wand, the run ends with a time of 1:25.567 seconds. As far as the 2018 task, this segment is 4.033 seconds faster. Previously, SpongeBob walked straight backwards. While this allows for the first ICB to be performed earlier, it takes longer to stack the ICBs since it takes longer to correctly position SpongeBob. Additionally, due to SpongeBob performing both ICBs on the same wall, he needs to fully turn around afterwards, whereas the 2022 task is able to combine this time turning around with setting up the second ICB. The 2018 task also does not perform an ICB after the first fuse. Due to this, SpongeBob not only moves slower, but also has to fully enter the final 2 tubes. And with that, this TAS represents a 16.783 improvement over the 2018 TAS. Since the Dolphin emulator has the most advanced and accurate tools for 6th generation consoles, the loads mimic GameCube hardware timing. The GameCube loses several seconds to loads over the Xbox, which is the optimal console for speedrunning BfBB. On GameCube, the total time for the loads is 43.31 seconds, accounting for over half the run. Had this TAS been created to mimic optimal hardware, the loads would have only been 13.53 seconds, nearly 30 seconds faster and breaking the minute barrier. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, and if you've liked what you've seen, why don't you go and hit that subscribe button? According to YouTube statistics, they don't even show the graphs if no one has watched your videos, so congrats on being the first person literally ever. Why don't you go and celebrate by typing first in the comments to let everybody know? Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you next time.